Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to the prep video for lesson 35 in this series on developing a survival game. This video and this series have been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors. So, what will we be doing in the tutorial proper? Well, in today's tutorial, we'll be creating the rest of our landscape material layers. We'll be creating our sand, our grass, our mud, and our dirt layers. Now, I'm doing this a bit late. I kind of wanted to get the texture stuff done and do the material layer stuff, but I thought it was too much, so I split this into two prep videos. So for this video, we're going to be talking about our material layers and options for layering materials, because there are a couple of options out there. So there are, as I said, a couple of ways to do this. Materials, as we know, can be layered. Now, they can be layered with material functions, which is what we're doing. And I'll justify why, in quotes around the word justify, in a moment. Or we could use a material layers asset, of which there are two types, material layer and material layer blend. Now, material layer assets are a simplified process of blending and layering materials that takes advantage of material instancing. That last little bit is not something that happens with material functions, and we'll come back to why that might play a role in choosing between material functions and material layers in a moment. But simply put, it allows us to create what would be overly complicated materials in a more manageable way. And to be fair, using material functions allows for that as well. But it allows for better management. Then again, I would argue that material functions allow for better management than having an overly complicated material. It allows for better iteration of materials, and again, I would argue material functions do the same thing. But it offers better control, flexibility, and reduced complexity as compared to other options. Now, that might be true, and that might be fair, but I've already started one way, we're going to stick with it. So when we consider material layers as an asset type or material functions, how do we pick between them? Well, with layer blends, you can use either, as noted on the last slide. And in this series, we use material functions. Now, what's my rationale for that? Why, given all the benefits, am I using this material function instead of material layer assets? Well, we don't need access to all the features in material layers. I would say if we're doing a layered sort of thing like a human with clothing, skin, glasses, eyes, hair, etc., then yes, probably using material layers as assets instead of material functions makes a bit more sense to do. In this case of our landscape, we don't need all those features. And this is a point we discussed in the first prep video, picking your engine. Yes, I do realize we've upgraded the engine, and we'll be upgrading the engine further for this series. And two, again, there'll be other things we'll do where it doesn't really, we don't need all the access to it. So for what we're doing, the benefits offer nothing new. Again, there is a caveat of that, except for one little feature, which I have an asterisk next to the word features as well. We'll come to that in a minute, and actually also again on the next slide. And personally, for what we are doing with our islands material, I find it easier to implement with material functions than I had with layer material assets or material layer assets. And simply, as a result of all of this, I am more comfortable, maybe confident, not sure which of the two it really is, with material functions than I am with material layer assets for this use case. For other things, per my example of a human body with clothing and hair and eyes and all the normal stuff, then I might go, yeah, we're using material layer assets, no questions. Now, there is one feature that would make our lives easier. And you will note that since the start of section 4, when we're working on our water, I have commented on the naming conventions. I did a lot in the last video. I really stressed it. I wouldn't need to be this pedantic if we were using a material layers asset. So let's talk about that difference in a bit more depth. What that difference really is due to that material instancing that I was talking about a few slides back. Material functions require a parameter to be available outside of the material function for it to be something that we can edit. How do we do that? Well, we create a function input like we did for our camera distance, for our tessellation, and we then create another thing that edits that parameter elsewhere. I'm saying this based on UE4's Epic documentation. This might have been true at one point, but I think I make a comment about it in one video where I go, oh, I have access to this. I'm surprised. If you create the parameter in the material instance, yes, it is harder to get access to it directly. And it might be our use case where this is where we're getting around it. But in many cases, to access a parameter in a material function, we need to have an input. And if we don't, then we can't edit it. In our last video, we did our rock tiling. We named it rock tiling instead of tiling. And we are able to edit it in the material instance landscape, but that's an input that we're using for that parameter. If we didn't name it rock tiling as a parameter or as a input function, just created a rock tiling parameter in our layer, we might not be able to edit it or access it. Please note my little confused segue a few seconds ago where I went, wait, this might have been true at one point. I'm not sure what's going on there. We really shouldn't have access to that. Also, sorry, I just punched my desk. And in material layers, we can edit parameters without using inputs. This makes for a slightly cleaner material blueprint. In fact, actually, this might be what's happening, is because we have set it to be a layer, we are getting some access to parameters we normally wouldn't get access to. So we might be getting some of the advantages already. And yes, it does make naming and editing things easier. Now, one thing we don't get access to, and one thing I know we have to do, is that it doesn't group things based on what they're linked to. So think about, we have rock tiling, we're going to have grass tiling, sand tiling, etc. tiling. If we just named it tiling and left the parameter as tiling, then it all use the same tiling. It wouldn't change. And we also group our parameters. If you notice in the last video, everything was grouped into a category called rock. We're going to do the same for our grass, same for our sand. We're going to group them into categories. The reason for this is when we go to edit the material instance, that is then the groups that show up on the page. So we can very easily go to, these parameters are grass only, these are rock only, and we don't have to scroll through an entire list to find the ones we're looking for. They're already grouped together. With material layer assets, that automatically happens for you. And yes, there are some things that we could have taken advantage of, like that, with material layers. But again, I am more confident or comfortable with material functions for what we're doing. And that brings us to our challenge. For the more artistically inclined out there, convert our material functions, and you can start after this video or after we import our height maps, to material layer assets. You'll need to determine if you need to use a material layer or a material layer blend. And note that blend might help with some issues. It also might cause other issues. Though you won't see these until we import our height map, which is why I do say potentially after we import our height maps. And you will need to then determine how the layers will be painted onto the map. We will do this with our material functions, so you'll need to replicate that. And we'll do it during the video where we import our height map. So again, I might say wait until we do the height map. And finally, share your results with the community. Share it on the community Discord, either in the Survival Series channel or in the In Progress section channel. All right, that covers everything I need to cover for this video. This video has been brought to you by Patreon sponsors like Hanas, Galwa, Rian, 1Volt10, and Connor. If you've enjoyed this series or this video, please hit the like button down below. It really does help this channel out. And if you want to be here when we work on the rest of our materials and import our height map and all that stuff, make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon. And if you want to take your support a bit further, consider becoming a Patreon sponsor. All right, I look forward to seeing you in the tutorial proper and hope that you have a wonderful day.